Welcome everyone to this channel where I will be sharing episode reviews of that 1960s television show that I enjoy so much, Lost in Space. I encourage you to like and subscribe so that you don't miss each new installment as I work my way through all 83 episodes of this wonderful series. Up next, Season 1, Episode 27, The Lost Civilization. John, Don, Will, and the robot are on an expedition in the chariot searching for a new source of water and take refuge in a cave to escape the heat. Wandering about that cave, Will discovers a young princess of an underground civilization that now plans to invade Earth. This is a conflicted episode for me. I kind of enjoy it, but wish I enjoyed it so much more. All of the good stuff is there. The struggle for survival on an alien planet, a subterranean race of aliens, some meaningful adventure and drama with interesting alien characters, and yet I and probably many fans rank it as one of the lowest, if not the lowest episode across all of Season 1. I'll explain my reasons why a bit later, but first, on with our story. John, Don, Will, and the robot are out in a chariot searching for a new source of water when the robot warns of a volcano erupting. The chariot, however, becomes unresponsive, endangering them all from the very quickly approaching lava. Don is able to bypass the ignition system, and they are once again on their way just in the nick of time. We see, however, an alien character monitoring their approach in the chariot on his video screen. The men continue their search for water, and it doesn't appear that they will find any when the robot suddenly announces that a supply of water is nearby. Given the terrain, Don and John respond with skepticism, but Will defends the robot as always being right. They park the chariot, and it quickly becomes clear that the water sensed by the robot is underground. The men set up a drill rig, and sure enough, water starts to bubble up. John, however, discovers that water is brackish. Will and the robot take some heat from Don over having been wrong, at which time Will refines the robot's search criteria, that they are searching for drinking water. Back inside the chariot, they begin sweltering as the air conditioning doesn't seem to be working. Then Will shares some valuable information.
He kept saying the nights were getting warmer.
I knew it.
And he wanted to do something about the air conditioner in his cabin. So he came out to the chariot.
Oh, no. You don't have to go any further, Will. I can guess the rest. He took some parts from our chariot unit for his own air conditioner, right?
Yeah, I guess that's just about what happened.
Inside temperature 110 and rising.
The robot advises that there is a cave ahead, which they find, and it offers them shelter to make repairs. Don and John begin work on the chariot while Will and the robot do some exploring around the cave. While wandering about, the robot advises that a large supply of drinking water is nearby. Will becomes excited at the prospect that he and the robot could be the ones to discover the water, and they journey ever deeper into the cave. The robot indicates that the water is down a large hole, but Will doesn't see anything. Just then, there's an earthquake, Will loses his footing, falls down the hole, and becomes trapped by fallen boulders. The robot is able to push them out of the way, but there's another quake, and he also falls down the hole. Though damaged by the fall, Will is able to repair the robot, who advises him that they will need to find an alternate path out of the cave through trial and error.
Way along here. Will that get us out?
Insufficient data. Suggest trial and error.
Okay. We sure have been giving those errors a workout.
Back at the chariot, Don seems to be able to get the AC working in spite of the missing part. They're ready to head back out, and John calls for Will when he realizes that he can see neither Will nor the robot. He and Don grab some rope and begin searching the cave for them. Don notices the robot's tread marks, and they follow them right to the edge of the hole where he fell in. Using the rope, the men navigate their way to the bottom of the hole to discover that neither Will nor the robot are there.
Will couldn't have fallen this far, and what I mean is, he couldn't be down here.
Well, look at that. Something fell there, pretty hard.
Only the robot could have made a mark like that in the ground.
Well, a fall like that would have broken the circuits. Now, he's not here. Somebody had to fix him.
Will.
I'm counting on it.
Meanwhile, the robot advises Will that they are approaching a large body of water. While that might be cause for celebration, as Will notes,
We have plenty of water now. Before, we didn't have enough water, but we weren't lost. And now, I like it better the other way.
We will not stay lost. I will take you back to where your father...
the robot acknowledges, however, that he does not know the way back to John and Don. They push on together and amazingly end up in a lush jungle. Will asks what we might all be reasonably asking: how is this possible that there is first a whole ocean underground and now a jungle? Then the robot sounds an alarm, saying that there are human people in the area. Will assumes the robot's sensors are wrong, that those sensors must have been damaged in the fall. As they press on, though, we see an alien guard peeking out from the jungle growth. Continuing on their trek, the men endure another earthquake that sends an immense boulder tumbling towards Don, crushing his ankle. John finds something to use for leverage and is able to free Don. Not able to walk, Don says that John should leave him behind and continue his search for Will, but John will have none of that. He helps support Don's weight, and the two men press on once more, albeit a bit more slowly. Meanwhile, the robot is alerting Will of danger ahead. Once more, Will assumes the robot's sensors must not be operating properly. The robot, however, advises Will to test the ground ahead. Will does and uncovers a trap that could have killed him. Now recognizing the risks that are all around, Will apologizes to the robot for not listening and respecting his warnings. The robot advises that there are no additional traps and the two return to their journey. Before long, they approach a clearing and the robot once more sounds an alarm that a human presence is nearby. Will moves out ahead and sees a small girl lying asleep on a bed out in the middle of the jungle. The robot instructs Will to wake the girl, and he tries, but she doesn't stir. Citing the story of Sleeping Beauty, the robot tells Will to kiss the girl, but Will is resistant. The robot persists, Will ultimately concedes and kisses her. With a flurry of lights, she awakens. She greets Will, but he refuses to believe her when she tells him that she is a princess. She asks Will where he's from, and he says Earth. For now, all she says is that that's too bad. Will asks her if she can get him back to his dad on the surface, and she says first that he must follow her. Meanwhile, John and Don are continuing their journey and are astonished when they too come upon the underground ocean and then the jungle. Don is now managing with the use of a large stick for a crutch, and they continue to follow the footprints and tracks that are clearly visible in the soil. Suddenly, they're surprised by a pair of armed guards who make it clear that they mean business. Meanwhile, the princess tells Will that she has an army, but he continues to be skeptical. They finally arrive at her underground palace, and we see sitting upon a throne her major domo. He greets her as Your Highness, at which point Will finally recognizes that she really is a princess. Will introduces himself, and the princess says that she would like her major domo to show Will some of their warriors. He instructs Will to descend through a hatch in the floor. Will tells the robot to follow, but he cannot, as he is larger than the opening and will need to wait there. Down below, Will discovers that John and Don have been captured and are now prisoners. John asks Will how he got there, and it's amusing to see the young Will struggle to explain it all.
Who are these people? How did they get you?
Well, you see, there was this girl, and I had...
Yes?
You let my father go or I'll tell the prince...
Will demands that they be released, but Major Domo says they have not been harmed. He signals to a guard, and they are now freed from their shackles. Major Domo says that, along with Will, the men will also have the privilege of seeing some of their warriors. He directs them away, but the injured Don struggles to walk. One of the guards pushes him along, and John strikes the guard. With that, 2 guards restrain Don on a table. With an array of lights, sounds, and even a small explosion, Major Domo commands Don now to stand on his foot. Miraculously, Don's ankle is fully healed. Major Domo takes that as an opportunity to state that,
"Perhaps we are not quite as primitive as you thought at first. But there is more, much more. Come."
Everyone returns to the upper level, and John and Don marvel at all of the technology they see. Major Domo says that it is time that they know, and then describes the plan of his people, the conquest of the entire universe. Though it seems impossible, Major Domo goes on to explain.
"Centuries ago, my people began the most daring, most magnificent plan ever conceived. No less than the conquest of the entire universe."
You picked yourself quite a job.
Yes, it's an impossible job for any one race, no matter how advanced their technology. But time and planning solve all problems. And here in our underground world, we have been collecting what we have needed most. Manpower. We have stored more than 1,000 generations of soldiers, waiting for the day when their vast numbers would be needed.
And that day is...
Now, long ago...
He then says that the first attack would be against whatever planet produced a traveler intrepid and ingenious enough to find his way to the princess. John finds it all completely incredible.
You mean this daring, resourceful, intrepid traveler you describe as my son, Will?
You evidently find the idea amusing. I do not. Take these men back to their cell.
Just a minute, I demand to know.
With that, John and Don are once again taken away as prisoners. Will pleads for their freedom, but Major Domo says that he will see them again if he cooperates. He goes on to say that the ancient prophecy has been fulfilled, that the warriors and their princess have returned to life, and that there is only one more thing to do. Before the end of this day, Will is to marry the princess. He is to become her prince consort, and together they will begin the dynasty that will rule the universe. Predictably, like any young boy Will's age, he recoils passionately against the idea of marriage, amusingly rattling off any number of reasons why.
Dynasty that will rule the universe.
Me? Marry that girl? I can't do it.
You will do it.
I can't get married. I'm just a kid.
You were old enough to fight your way to her side.
I didn't fight anybody. I can't get married. I couldn't even support a wife. I haven't got a job.
This matter was decided in many centuries.
The princess overhears Will say that he just wants to be a kid and have fun, but she has never heard of fun. She excuses Major Domo and calls Will over. As he approaches her on her throne, she calls him her consort. Will asks what that is, and she says it's the husband of a princess. Will makes it clear that he doesn't want to be her husband, and she makes it equally clear that she heard and understands that. Then she asks Will to explain to her the nature of fun. Will describes it like any young boy might.
Because you want to. Have you ever skipped stones?
No, I don't think so. What is it?
Well, you find some flat stones, and you go to a lake, and you throw them sort of underhand, like this.
Why?
To make them skip on the water. Once I got one to skip 10 times, and that's not easy.
No, I guess not. Is that how you have fun?
That's just one of the ways. Well, there are millions more. But when you get married, you can't do things like that anymore.
Why not?
I don't know, you just can't, that's all. You have to worry about money and important junk and stuff like that.
I see.
Will apologizes for not wanting to marry the princess, and she says she understands. The princess then approaches the 2 prisoners. She asks which one is Will's father, and John says he is. She releases him from his restraints, and John asks to have Don released next, but she refuses, saying only him and Will, and that they must go immediately. John scrambles through the controls hoping to free Don, but cannot. He then runs off to the throne room and hides there as Major Domo describes planning for the ceremony. Once Major Domo steps away, John tells Will that they're getting out. John tries to open the hatch back down to the lower level, but in that instant, Major Domo returns with a couple of guards. After declaring John's attempt at escape a waste of time and effort, John has some thoughts of his own.
No, you people never are. You never listen, never learn. You're all the same, you would-be conquerors. Whether it's a continent, the world, or the universe. A few pages in history in exchange for millions of lives.
Then, in a rare display of bluntness for Lost in Space, Major Domo says quite simply,
Kill him.
No, don't!
Just then, there's another earthquake. John uses the confusion to fight off the guards one at a time. He then grabs Major Domo, and the two struggle before John is finally able to land a punch that throws him onto some equipment, and we see it explode, killing Major Domo. Then John, Will, and the robot run off to save Don. The robot topples the controls, which frees Don from his restraints, and they all make a dash for it. On their way, they see the princess once more by her bed in the jungle. John says they'll take her with them, and Will pleads for her to come, saying that the quake will bring the whole place down on her head. The dutiful princess, however, recognizes her obligations.
I will go back into my sleep and wait for another day.
Come on, Will.
Right away, Dad. Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay. So long, and thanks.
Let's go, son.
Goodbye, Will Robinson. Have fun.
Will catches up, and they all escape the cave. We next see them in the chariot making their way back to the Jupiter 2. Will watches as a quake seals up the cave. He is now feeling melancholy over the young princess, wondering what it is that will happen to her.
Well, she'll sleep again, I suppose, until some other young man comes along to awaken her.
What about the invasion?
I don't know, son. If another young adventurer goes down there someday, I guess their army will be turned loose on the universe. It's a possibility our world's going to have to live with. I only hope it doesn't happen in our time.
Arriving at the ship, the men are greeted warmly by Maureen, Judy, and Penny. Will tries to explain their adventure, but of course Penny finds it all impossible to believe. Don is also sharing with Judy a bit about their journey when he remembers that he wants to hold Smith to account for pilfering the air conditioning part from the chariot. Finding Smith, he leaves him only with the hope that someday Smith will get what he deserves. The next scene sets up our next episode. As always, I will withhold my comments on the scene until my review of that episode, A Change in Space. So a few more thoughts about the Lost Civilization. Much as I stated about our prior episode, The Space Croppers, the Lost Civilization is certainly not Lost in Space at its best. But it's also very far away from being Lost in Space at its worst. More than anything, The Lost Civilization feels like a very different kind of episode, one that sort of just doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the series. I'll explain that as we go along, but let me start first with this episode's negatives, as they are truly very many. For one, we're not even a third of the way through the series, and I'm already growing tired of some of the story devices that are used over and over again. It has already become predictable that an earthquake will happen at some critical moment. Here in The Lost Civilization, that happens no less than 4 times over just 51 minutes. Likewise, we have seen the chariot become stuck so many times that it's no longer exciting or interesting. The most disappointing thing about this is that much more interesting and varied story devices could have easily been inserted. Was there really not some other more interesting way for John to be able to overcome the guards than yet another earthquake? Earlier in the episode, couldn't the ground under Will's feet have become loose such that he simply loses his footing and ends up sliding down into the cave? And while I'm at it, we have two earthquakes. One sends Will falling down the hole, and the other, the robot right after him. Back at the chariot, which certainly could not have been that far away, John and Don seem completely unaware of any earthquakes. But there are so many other problems and distractions. While the robot is working to save Will after his fall in the cave by pushing those two boulders, did he really have to grunt? I know we're in a different place in the series and we have a more human robot, but is that what robots do? Grunt? Also, at one point, Don says it's like a blast furnace out there. Indeed, 125 degrees. So why are the men still wearing their heavy long-sleeved velour tunics instead of paring down to t-shirts like they did in the Hungry Sea? Then there's the nature of the lower level of the cave. One does have to wonder how there's light in the jungle portion of what is, after all, a cave. I suppose we can rationalize our way through all of this, but this one is asking quite a bit of us. Also, this episode uses much more stock footage than usual. The lava, and looking down the hole in the cave, for instance. Nearly always, stock footage never looks quite right compared to the rest of the episode, and that is acutely true here, especially that one view down the hole in the cave. We are clearly seeing a dry well, even though that doesn't look anything at all like what we see Will and the robot fall into. It's also a little hard to believe that Will can repair the robot after such a dramatic fall in just a few moments without any tools or parts. Near the end, John, Will, and now even the robot are down on the lower level to free Don from his restraints, but earlier, the robot clearly and correctly stated that he could not fit through the opening, the hatch between the two floors. So how did he end up down on the lower level? There are just so many things about this episode that simply don't make sense that even as I try to watch it through the wide eyes of a 6-year-old little boy, it's hard not to become distracted by some of these questions. And unfortunately, these questions just keep coming. Why does Will have to kiss the girl? Why would an earthly fairy tale make the robot think kissing an alien girl on an alien planet is the only way to wake her? Why do the princess and Major Domo look so different? If, as we are told, this race of beings has been waiting for thousands of generations, why is their sleeping princess still only a child? Maybe most silly of all, is leaving your princess asleep out in the jungle in an underground cave waiting for someone to show up and kiss her really the right way for a civilization to establish their military strategy? I could go on, but you get the idea. Head scratchers like these are sprinkled across most Lost in Space episodes. In Lost Civilization, though, they are just so many. They are so constant, and they are so crazy that it can be hard to see past them and simply enjoy the story. And yet, I still do. Well, kinda. So with that, let me transition to, well, I guess I would call them the positives. And I'll start with our guest stars. First, we have Royal Dano as Major Domo, and I need to say right up front, I know Major Domo is a title and not a name, but for simplicity, throughout this review, I simply refer to him as though that were his name, even though his name is actually never stated. Royal Dano appeared in a broad variety of movies and TV shows over his long career, usually cast as he was here, as an evil and sinister character. There's a weirdness to his character that I'll touch on in a moment, but I will say that I did enjoy him as Major Domo. Then we have Kim Karath as the princess. Though her list of credits is not nearly as long as Dano's, she was quite busy, having appeared in The Sound of Music and assorted TV shows. Most of her entertainment career occurred while she was still only a young girl. She was only about 7 at the time of filming this episode, and for someone so young, I thought she did very well in the role, and I enjoyed watching her as the princess. Here, let me take a moment to address these aliens' use of the English language. Up to now, not entirely but mostly, aliens either didn't speak English, or there was some kind of explanation as to how they came to know the language. Pretty much from this point forward, it's just a given that everyone everywhere speaks the King's English. It is, however, impressive that it took this deep into the series for that to happen. Next, there's the story. It originates with some of that struggle for survival that I always enjoy, in this instance, the search for water. One of the criticisms I sometimes hear about this episode is why were the men searching for water so far away from the Jupiter? How would they ever pipe it back? The answer to that is given to us not in this episode, not even the last one, All That Glitters. It occurs back during the final scene at the end of Space Croppers, 2 episodes ago. Then, John prepares to head out in the chariot, and we hear him describe that they need to find an additional source of water in advance of a coming heat wave. It was never the intent that this would be a permanent source of water being piped back to the campsite. This instead would be a place to go to bring back containers of water to survive a temporary drought, and it ends up being a nice callback to the Hungry Sea as well as the Oasis. That said, the men do return to the ship as if mission had been accomplished, but the underground ocean had been capped and they never found any other source of water. I may stand alone on this, but I'll have to say that I love the scene when Will and the robot come upon the sleeping princess. It's hard not to smile, if not laugh out loud, as Will and the robot bicker over kissing her. This is owed entirely to how well the scene is played by Bill, along with both Dick and Bob as the robot.
Kiss her.
It is the only way to wake her up.
And let her sleep.
Stop. It is necessary to kiss the girl.
All right, then you do it.
It is necessary that you do it.
How do you know what's necessary for me to do?
Dr. Smith has programmed into my memory banks the plots of every story in literature. This is one of them.
What one?
Sleeping Beauty.
She doesn't look like any beauty to me. But she sure is sleeping.
That is why you must kiss her to wake her up.
Do I have to?
Affirmative.
Now I know why Don gets so mad at Dr. Smith.
Kiss the girl.
All right. Give me a chance, will you?
Kiss the girl.
The same could be said later when Major Domo advises Will that he will marry the princess. I especially love that last line when Will says that he doesn't have a job. Not just a line, but the way Bill is running out of breath by the time he gets to that line. That makes it as believable as it is fun to watch.
You will do it.
I can't get married. I'm just a kid.
You were old enough to fight your way to her side.
I didn't fight anybody. I can't get married. I couldn't even support a wife. I haven't got a job.
This matter was...
I also always thought it was a bit surprising when Major Domo, while pointing at John, orders his guards to kill him. Lost in Space somewhat famously avoided using words like kill, preferring instead alternatives like destroy or eliminate. Admittedly, it is a little jarring to hear Major Domo order the killing, and doing so in such a nonchalant way. Throughout this review, I have mentioned how this episode has a very different feel such that it almost seems out of place among the series. For me, that's because at times it looks more like a B-grade outer space movie from the 50s. Indeed, Major Domo and his guards all look like they just walked right out of a 1950s Buck Rogers feature. Even the set of their underground fortress, which was borrowed from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, also seems to look a little bit that way. That said, Major Domo and his guards and the fortress are still kind of interesting and fun to see. Lastly, you will recall that this is one of the instances when 2 episodes were being produced at the same time. This instance is something I described more fully during my prior review of All That Glitters. Here, though, we have a final scene with the men returning to the Jupiter. Will and Don share a bit about their adventure that they were just on. While Maureen does say that now all is well thanks to the men being back, I would have liked to have seen a line or 2 inserted about the women's own adventure from All That Glitters. So here, let me give the final word to our robot, as he offers some perspective that Will seems to already understand.
Whatever happened after he kissed her anyway?
They were married and lived happily ever after.
Married and lived happily ever after?
You are correct. It does not compute.
The problems with this episode are many and vast. That said, I do still kind of enjoy The Lost Civilization. I'm not even sure exactly why. It's an implausible story built upon completely illogical elements, all of which should drag this episode's rating down to a D. It is, however, redeemed by some fun moments here and there, a decent bit of drama, some mystery, and a lot of visual interest. This episode also comes with a very different feel from the rest of the series. Its look, the action, the aliens, and even the music are a little bit different, making this episode a bit of a standout, even though that comes with a bit of the better as well as a bit of the worse. In the end, The Lost Civilization has at least some of a Season 1 feel going for it, and I still enjoy it. Well, pretty much. I'll call it a C, my lowest grading for all of Season 1, yet certainly much better than some of what lies ahead. Consequently, it also has my lowest ranking for the season of 29th. It's some reflection of the strength across all of Season 1 that I also rank The Lost Civilization as 57th for the full series, which puts it ahead of nearly a third of all other Lost in Space episodes. If you would like to see the full Lost in Space series, at the time of this recording, it presently airs for free on METV. That said, you can still find the full series on DVD at Walmart for a very reasonable price. Better still, pick up Lost in Space on Blu-ray. On that set, there are some wonderful extras, including commentary by the cast. Like I said, I'm a fan, so for me, the Blu-ray is a must-have. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on The Lost Civilization. One of the things I enjoy most about sharing reviews like this is how different fans perceive each episode quite differently, and I invite you to leave your own perspectives below in the comments. Most of all, I hope you will come back to join me when I review our next episode, A Change of Space. This is another episode about which I think there are very varying opinions, but I'll go ahead and say now that I do love this one and look forward to sharing my perspectives on it. Once again, I recommend subscribing so that you don't miss each new installment. Thanks for watching.